So let's go to the idea of the optimal contract length. So here we see that the longer the contract, the higher the marginal cost because of the commitment and the expenditures necessary. Then we compare that to what's the marginal benefit of different lengths of time. Well, the benefit of having a 1 month lease, a month to month lease, is you have a 1 month obligation. However, now you have the risk the other way that you may get kicked out in a month because the landlord found someone better to come next month. So there is a trade off between the various attributes of time, short term versus long term. Here, if marginal benefit is at the state in this example, and we have marginal costs below, then the intersection, again, conceptually, is it's worth to have a contract to extend the term. So I don't want to rent an office space, go through all that trouble for a month. So I think they have a big incentive to sign some type of lease for more than 1 month. And here, at some point, it's not worth it. So the landlord says, oh yeah, I'm happy to sign a lease. Why don't you sign a 50-year lease? And you say, well, I'm not sure the business will be around in 50 years. I'm not sure I'm going to be around in 50 years. So no, that's too long. So there is a trade-off between timeframes. To give an example, if we're trying to open a bakery in a shopping center, well, then we have a risk of failure, and we're not sure that people want to buy our baked goods. So we have to say, what is the optimal term for us? And it probably won't be a month. We certainly won't build a clientele in a month. It probably won't be 20 years because that's a lot of risk for us to commit to a 20-year lease. So it might be something like 3 to 5 years, because in that time frame, if we establish a good business, we'll be able to take advantage of that business and build a nice little cash flow for us. And we don't want to make it too short, because what might happen? Well, the landlord may find another baker who is willing to pay more money, or a national chain that they'd rather have rather than your modest one-off bakery. So you want to control it for a certain amount of time for your protection. That's why 1-year lease is a bit risky, because you go through all the work only to find that you're bumped out by an alternative tenant in a year. So those are the give and takes and considerations for a bakery. The other case is that there is, all right, let's look a little more closely at this idea of marginal benefit, marginal cost, and when we set the time frame. So if the marginal benefit curve goes up, then we have a reason to extend the lease longer. And an example of that is if we have Safeway. Safeway, if they are negotiating with a shopping center, they don't want to be there for 3 years or 5 years. They're pretty sure, based on their research, that when they put their store there, it will be around a long time and have pretty high probability of success based on their knowledge of site selection and merchandising. So it's a large investment up front that they don't want to make for just a few years. There's a high likelihood of success because they know what they're doing in site selection. And there's also risk that if they have a short-term lease for, say, 5 years, and then the landlord says, oh, I see you're doing great, I'm very happy about that. Next year, let's start your new lease at double the rate. Now you're stuck because you've built a good cash flow. You really don't want to leave, and yet the change in price hurts you. So there's incentive for Safeway, and they do have much, much longer term leases. 10, 20 years are not unusual for leases from Safeway in a retail center. And it also allows them to keep the rates low because now they have leverage. Right now, they know that the landlord wants Safeway in their shopping center to bring traffic to the shopping center. So they are in an optimal time to negotiate now. So they will often negotiate low rates and long term. And that's what we see typically in Safeway or any national tenant lease in real estate. So the duration of time is not a magic number for everyone. It depends on the circumstances, like so many things in business. So the other consideration is not on the marginal benefit side, but is on the marginal cost side. In this case, the example is, let's say we want to have chips, right? And we don't know what's going to happen to the cost of chips or our need for chips in the future. So we have a pretty steep and front-loaded marginal cost curve where it's a higher cost and the cost over time can grow because there's a high risk of changes over the next few years. So this will move the time frame of a contract toward the origin, where we want a shorter contract. because of, in this case, obsolescence or changing needs from your standpoint. But the other side may occur too. The marginal cost curve may shift to the right. And in this case, you have a reason to have a longer contract. What's an example of this? It's if you're the baker. I'll stay with the baking theme today. If you're a baker, you're going to buy flour, and the flour won't change very much for your recipes for the next few years. So if you're running that bakery, you're not going to buy a short-term duration. You could buy a longer-term duration for your contract for flour. Also reduces the risk of any price increases that may occur in flour. So in this case, less complex contracting environment, more assurance of the need of the particular product over time. All these combine to push out the term to a longer term supply agreement.